Hi Farmer Karen. I just finished the general health checkup on the new piglets that you recently bought. They are all looking healthy and well. Did you have any other concerns?
G'day, mate. Just want to have a quick chat. I've been using ECG for syncing and it's been going alright, but I've heard about Maprelin. Reckon it's worth a go?
Yes, actually. I have heard about Maprelin through my colleagues. If you can give me a day or two to discuss it in further detail with them, I'll be able to get back to you with some advice.
No worries, mate. Chat soon.
Hello all, I visited a client's pork farm today. They asked me whether or not they should incorporate Maprelin into their management of the herd. What are your thoughts on the product? I remember you mentioning a paper on it a few weeks ago.
Yes, I remember discussing that paper. It was on the effect of GnRH analog Maprelin on the reproductive performance of gilts itself.
That's jogging my memory. Do you know why they were conducting that study, Nev?
Yeah, I remember the study aimed to explore whether Maprelin performing a synthetic GnRH analog can positively affect reproductive performance in sows and gilt. This is really important for farmers trying to optimize breeding efficiency. Shortening the interval to estrus or increasing the percentage of sows returning to heat helps streamline batch production, improve scheduling, and reduce culling. Currently, ECG, the positive control, is widely used because it promotes follicular development and induces ovulation in various reproductive stages, pubertal, cycling, lactating, or anestrus. It also helps synchronize estrus and shortens the mean to estrus interval. Maprelin appears to offer similar benefits, but most studies have been limited to German farming systems. This study is significant because it investigates Maprelin's effects in Belgian farms. Also, earlier studies didn't assess how Maprelin affects reproductive hormone secretion in both sows and gilts at the same time. Findings so far have been inconsistent. Some research on cows and barrows reported that Maprelin only stimulated LH, while others found no increase in FSH or LH in ruminants or gilts. Since ECG is a natural hormone extracted from pregnant mares and subject to supply and ethical concerns, Maprelin, being a synthetic, structurally precise, could offer more controlled hormonal modulation, which is promising for improving farm-level reproductive management.
Sorry, Nev. Can you go over the hormone pathways again?
Of course, so in pigs, reproductive function is controlled by the HPG axis. The hypothalamus secretes GnRH, which stimulates anterior pituitary to release two gonadotropins, LH and FSH. FSH promotes follicular growth and oocyte development. LH triggers ovulation and supports estrogen and progesterone production. Pigs have an 18 to 21 day estrus cycle with two phases. In the follicular phase, FSH, LH, and estrogen levels rise as follicles mature. In the luteal phase, hormone levels drop, the corpus luteum forms and produces progesterone, preparing for potential pregnancy.
Got it. So Maprelin acts like GnRH?
Well, Maprelin is a synthetic version called 1-GnRH3. It mimics some effects of GnRH and is related to inducing estrus and sows after weaning or suppressing it in gilts following progesterone treatment. ECG, by contrast, acts like both FSH and LH, but it's biologically sourced. Maprelin being synthetic may offer more consistent control.
Super helpful, Nev. I was reading ahead. Want me to explain the methodology?
Yes, please.
The study looked at reproductive outcomes in domestic pigs, stratified by parity, gilts, primiparous, and pluriparous sows, which biologically makes sense as parity strongly influences reproductive physiology. However, a key limitation is generalizability. All animals came from just 3 commercial herds in similar settings, so results may not translate to different management systems. The sample size was relatively large, 9,918 pigs, including 216 gilts, 335 primiparous, and 1,299 pluriparous sows. It was statistically powered to detect a 5% difference, which is solid, but we should ask, is a 5% change clinically meaningful? Also, 27 animals were excluded for missing data, but the study doesn't clarify whether these inclusions were random, which could introduce bias. 3 treatment groups were used: Perfulin, ECG, and saline control. 3 gilts were treated for 48 hours post-alternogest and sows 24 hours post-weaning. Appropriate timing, but practical differences in how each herd handled treatments could have influenced outcomes in ways the study couldn't control. Outcomes included estrus and pregnancy rate, litter size, follicle development, and hormone levels. However, hormone sampling was limited. FSH was measured just 2 hours post-treatment, likely missing key hormonal peaks. The statistical approach was solid, Data processing was blinded with ANOVA, bound for any corrections, and non-parametric tests used appropriately. Herd and parity effects were modeled a strength, but with so many comparisons, the risk of false positive remains high, even with correction. Importantly, the study didn't account for several confounders like season, body condition, or stress, all of which can influence reproductive outcomes. So while the design is robust and the data set is strong, the narrow sampling window, limited herd diversity, and potential biases mean findings, especially marginal ones, should be interpreted with caution outside the control settings. This study adds valuable insights, but practical applications requires careful consideration of its limitation. What do you think about the results, Tom?
This study has some interesting findings showing that Maprelin positively impacts estrus rate and follicle size, while having no effect on litter size, FSH levels, or P4 levels. The first and most significant finding of this study was that Maprelin has a small but positive effect on estrus rate in pluriparous sows. Estrus rate was 95% within 7 days of treatment with Maprelin, whereas it was only 91% and 90% within 7 days of ECG and saline treatments, respectively. These results are statistically significant with a p-value of 0.005.
Would you say that this finding is also clinically relevant, and were there any other major findings from the study?
Yes, this also seems to have real-world significance. The 4 to 5% increase in estrus rate that Maprelin offers correlates to roughly 30 more animals that enter estrus within 7 days for herds with 650 animals. This means Maprelin can be used to reduce unproductive days for a significant amount of the herd. The animals treated with Maprelin that do not enter estrus within 7 days can be assumed to be unproductive and can be culled from the herd, saving the farmer time and money. Another major finding was that Maprelin has a positive effect on follicle size in gilts and pluriparous sows. This was also statistically significant with a p-value of 0.02 for gilts and 0.03 for pluriparous sows.
Will this be as clinically relevant as the effect Maprelin has on the estrus rate though?
Great question. I recently read an article stating that porcine follicles of less than 3 mm have lower meiotic and developmental capabilities, while follicles greater than 8 mm improves oocyte and embryo development. But all of the groups in this study, regardless of their treatment, had an average follicle size well within this 3 to 8 mm range. So despite the statistical significance, this effect of Maprelin on follicle size would only boost fertility for a very small portion of individuals. What is your take on this research, Izzy?
Well, in the critical analysis of Maplin's study with the overall appraisal, including strengths and limitations, new knowledge and potential impact on practice, the study had a blinded design and controlled methods and a decent sample size. There were some inconsistencies in hormonal response and a herd effect that affected pregnancy rates. While the study offers good insights, I'd say the conclusions aren't definitive and more research is needed.
So would you say it's usable in practice, or is it too early for this plan? Also, wasn't there something odd about the hormone levels?
Good question. It has potential, but it's not a solution that easily suits. It requires selective use and close monitoring. In summary of the new knowledge, Maprelin improves estrus return in 7 days after weaning in pluriparous sows, larger follicles at insemination in gilts and sows correlating for better fertility, does not affect litter size, suggesting it does not cause superovulation, which is a positive in safety. Economically, it reduced non-productive days for a potential savings of €10 per day for the farmer. Despite better follicle development, the hormones didn't significantly change, meaning we don't yet fully understand the mechanisms of Maprelin. It may act locally on the ovaries. Suggestions for the follow-up study should include more frequent hormone sampling, especially after treatment, to catch any rapid peaks. It was mentioned that researchers plan a future study on piglet birth weights and litter performance, which should provide more context.
Basically, the clinical relevance of this study is that Maprelin can reduce non-productive days and promote larger follicles for better fertility.
Yes, also it can improve estrus synchronization, particularly in farms with batch farrowing systems, supporting tighter breeding times and leading to improved profit margins if used strategically. However, there was a high rate of stillborn piglets in sows with Maprelin compared to those given ECG, which is relevant for careful monitoring, especially in herds with litter viability issues.
Good point, Izzy. Should we actually recommend it to clients given that risk?
If we're transparent enough about the pros and cons and use this part as well-managed protocol, then it could be a suitable tool in herds struggling with post-weaning estrus return. Above all, hormonal treatments work better when everything else like nutrition timing is already optimized.
Thank you guys, that was a good discussion. I will follow up with the client and discuss about the use of Maprelin for their gilts and sows. Hi Karen. I looked into Maprelin. It can slightly improve estrus rate and follicle size, helping reduce non-productive days with potential savings.
Worth trying?
We can trial it in a small group to see if it fits your system.
Cheers, I'll give it a crack.